Hey, it's Joe here, and welcome to a roofing tutorial, as if there aren't enough roofing tutorials. But honestly, I see so many people struggling with roofs, and that includes real architects, that I thought, well, let me use my expertise as an architect to teach you how to actually roof an arch-shaped house. Now, do not judge me by the design of this house. This is simply put together to be the worst case possible scenario that needs to be roofed. The first step that you need to take when you're designing a roof is decide on the style. Now I'm going to go through the 3 basic styles in this tutorial, and then we will have an advanced video on covering some interesting type roofs that you can implement to give your house a unique look. This is the gabled roof. The difference between a hipped roof and a gabled roof is that you actually have a section of the wall that raises up to the peak of the roof. With a hipped roof, the walls stop at gutter height. They never go beyond the gutter height. This is a mono-pitched roof, which is often used to patch small corners where the other roofs just simply don't reach, and people just stick them on to make them match. The first rule of thumb is to not mix and match these 3 styles. If you know what you're doing, you can implement these 3 together in a way that's not too jarring, but for the most part, gabled roofs and hipped roofs do not actually go together. Mono-pitched roofs sometimes work, but it's best, especially when you're starting out, it's best to stick to a single type of roof, and then that will not give you any kind of major complications. So if you use, let's rotate that, if you use this, for example, whoops, don't now go and tack on a pyramid roof, because it's just not going to blend together properly. I can just grab that angle. It may look fine for some angles, but the game can just stop going nuts. If you go around, you get these very weird intersections, which that is a rain trap. So your sims are going to get awfully wet. Let's undo that. So let's start with the hipped roof, which is, for the most part, will work for almost everybody. Let's go into a top view. The first thing to decide is, what is the biggest part of your roof that you're going to be working with? Okay, now this is actually going to be, architecturally speaking, this will be your main roof. That will be one roof, and you will have covered most of the house, as you can see. If you don't want to cover the porch, which of course, why wouldn't you? You would then have to use a different design, but just going for this to show you exactly how hipped roofs work. Now we've got this little bit here. So we pick another hipped roof. In fact, what you want to do is the half hipped roof. Let's rotate that and put it down. Now, there's a lot of people go wrong with these roofs, because they tend to begin changing the pitches, and you get a horrible mess. If you stick to the same pitch, let me get that line for you, and unselect, your roofs actually blend together perfectly. This is how you do an architectural roof. That down the center here is the valley, and that's the hip. And that's how you get an exactly matching roof from any angle. Let me go and do the other 2 quickly so you can follow along, and I'll give you a little bit more info. So how these work is, again, you go for the half, you rotate it, stretch it to fit the actual, and then you drag it in. Now, you need to drag it in so that it intersects. You don't need to drag it all the way through. You just need to basically intersect so that the 2 ridges actually will be met. If you look at it sideways, the game will stop going nuts. If the game will just stop there. Now it's responding. Now you see you've got a perfect match. The roof is actually blended into the other one. The ridges come down and continue along the smaller hip. This one is pretty much the same, but you can use a double hipped like that. Stretch it to fit and align it with the roof. Now, this is where you start getting really odd angles. There are certain types of combinations that just don't work. They don't work in real life either. although some architects do seem to think so. This here is just a water trap. It's just a problem that this house will continuously have water leaks in this area. So how do you fix this? Well, by simply enlarging this wall by 1 tile. Now what you do is you bring this roof out, and again you have a perfect seam. You just unselect. You've now got a perfectly hipped house on every angle. If you look at it, it looks perfect. Well, as perfect as it can be in-game. There you go. That's how you do a hipped roof. So pretty much almost any odd-shaped house is best suited to a hipped roof. If you want to extend the eaves, of course, they will still match. You just simply need to extend each and every single one. Just grab there you go. And they will continue to tie in as long as your eaves are all, and select, as long as your eaves are all the same length extensions. And there you go. That's how you do the perfect hipped roof. Of course, this is not a particularly attractive house, and it's really more of a bunker. Now, the biggest problem that happens is when people begin to adjust the pitches of the roofs. Another rule to follow is that you always use the same pitch. I know a lot of simmers like to, well, it doesn't fit, so they just start to fiddle with the things, and then they get you all sorts of odd. You see, if you adjust the angle to be exactly the same, they continue to fit. So if you don't want a 45-degree pitched roof, you bring it down to exactly the same angle, and it blends again. What doesn't work are different pitched roofs. As you can see by my really horrible house, they again, all the ridges are aligned. So never have, if you actually look at it sideways, you can actually see the two diagonals. They're all parallel. If you change the pitch of the roof, they're no longer parallel. And this is where you get these really horrible connections. In real life, you couldn't even build this. This would just be complete disaster. So make sure that all your pitches match. And if they don't, take it down another notch. And there you go. Right, so that's the easiest roof you can put on a house, particularly a house that's got a lot of steps backwards and forwards. Right, moving along, let's do the gabled house. Delete all of these. Now, gabled houses are more complicated because they basically have one direction. So you have to have a gable wall somewhere, and then things do not always butt up against each other. So let's start by putting down and zooming in a bit our roof. Now, what next? The thing to decide with, I'm going to take the eaves off because it's easier to work with to actually show. Oops. To show the roof building without any eaves. So you need to decide which way the roof is going to run. In general, gabled roofs will run the longest. The gable will be on the smallest facade of the house, purely because the pitch of the roof just simply goes up far too high if you run it on the short way. So what we do here is possibly stretch it to here, like that. Now you've got the gables on either end of the house. The back is relatively easy to sort. You simply take a half gable. Oh, sorry, that's the diagonal. Put that down, stretch it out, reduce the eaves. There we go. Now you've got if the game can just not go nuts for a short while, you've got two matching pitches, and it's blending in perfectly into your roof. You are, just go down, unselect. You've got an almost near perfect connection of where the gutters would actually be, although the Sims doesn't actually have a gutter. Here you would do exactly the same. You can actually just copy the roof right over and put it down. And there you go. The front, of course, now with this house you actually have this bit of an awkward space here. The quicker solution is, of course, to bring the house out here so that it actually connects. If you don't want to do that, what you can do is you can simply put a column underneath there, create a little porch. The front works exactly the same. It's really just the same process. And you've got your perfect connections again. You can really just copy and paste and rotate. And there you go. And that's how you do a gabled house. That one's sticking out a little bit. Oh dear, I've actually moved it instead of copying it, but do you get the idea? So this is how you create a gabled house. Now let's look at mono-pitched roofs. These are some of the most abused and misunderstood roofs in the Sims game. How do you use them? Well, for one, a good rule of thumb is to always have the one mono-pitch roof smaller than the other. So if we look at taking up this space here, or that space, or we could even do it this way, we could create a mono-pitch that does this. Zoom in a bit so we can see it. Pull it across to here. And let's say we're going to cover this section here. Now, never mind the walls below. I'm not following the exact pattern below. I'm simply showing you how the roofs are going to work. Of course, mono-pitch roofs have the downside that they go extremely high. So generally, the pitches on mono-pitch roofs are quite shallow, like that. They're very popular for the 70s and 60s. Now, the reason why you never have two exactly the same width mono-pitch roofs is because they will meet in the middle and they will create an awful X intersection. You actually then just need to use either a gabled roof or a hipped roof for that. So your mono-pitch roof always have to be different sizes, or you have to start changing the pitches, and mismatched pitches is always a disaster. Now, when you put this one down here and you stretch it to meet this one, you bring the pitch down. If you look at straight on, again, just allow me. These lines are actually the same angle. You see, if you start to drop it, the lines begin to, let's just stretch this so it covers the whole property. And there you go. If you can cheat and have slightly different angle heights here, but you generally don't want to have multiple pitches on roofs because it tends to look odd. If you find that your roof is looking a bit strange, it's because you don't actually, you see, if you drop it too low, the intersection looks awkward. So this is why you have one big mono-pitched roof. It always has to be at least one tile bigger than the other one, so that you have an intersection where you can actually place windows on. You can also bring in the eaves so that it doesn't cut through that one. And with mono-pitch roofs, you can actually also put in windows into the clear story, or the roofing part, I suppose you'd call it. You can actually go and put, again, we'll just pick up a window. We haven't got enough roof pitch here. But if it was a little bit higher, you should be able to actually put windows in here. Let's try this one. There we go. See, you can actually put in a few roof windows. So this is the essential part, the essentials of doing that's all blurred, of a mono-pitched roof. Now, if you look at it in plan view, your one pitch is a lot larger than the other one. Oops, there's the neighbor's house. Let's get that out of the way. But ideally, you want to keep the pitches pretty similar so that it doesn't start to look odd. The roof starts to go up far too high if you use a very odd pitch. Now, if you want to roof your house in a series of roofs, of mono-pitched roofs, let's go back to the roof menu. And let's start picking some. Again, you can't roof one big mono-pitched roof. Let me show you. If you make one mono-pitched roof over the whole house, you get this monumental skyscraper, which just looks awful. If you're looking at something really freaky, then yes, that works. But we are looking for realism here. So let's reduce. Let's go into top view mode. Let's reduce these down a bit. I will not select. It's being most uncooperative. Again, what you need to decide is what are the roofs that you can actually intersect. For example, you may want to put this one here, like that, covering this section. Let's see what that looks like. And let's bring the pitch down, like this. And have a concrete section in the middle. So you could actually leave as a tiled section here. Let's copy that over to the opposite end. Of course, this house is not in equilibrium because it was really designed to be a really awkward looking house. So, okay, select. Having a bit of trouble there. And there's your two mono pitches. The mono pitches are often a problem to connect. So what architects usually do is the lazy way is they just create a concrete roof. So that middle section there would just become a concrete roof. And that's simply how they do it. So if you have the dance floor, how many tiles that is, you could actually come in and put that in there, and then you've got a skylight in between your two mono-pitched roofs. This sort of style actually works with a relatively flat pitch. Very, very high pitches tend to look very odd in mono-pitched roofs. They just go up far too high. So you would be looking at that. And you've got basically a connector between the two roofs. So those are mono-pitched roofs. They generally also should be used exclusively when you start to combining mono-pitched roofs with gabled roofs and hipped roofs. You start to getting very, very odd things. So it's best to stick to one type of roof. Right, let's look at some roof materials. So if your roof is looking a bit odd, it's probably because you've got the wrong roof material for the style or even the pitch. Let's take a look at thatch. Thatch is not particularly waterproof. So when you see a thatch building, it usually has a very high steep roof, 45, and if the game can just behave for a while, usually higher than about a 45-degree pitch, so that the water can just run off really fast without soaking through the thatch. So you would never have a thatch roof like that. It's just odd. It just doesn't look right. Similarly with Mediterranean type of tiles, very, very flat roofs usually look odd because you don't see them in real life. You don't really see Mediterranean houses with roofs, clay tiles like this, because they don't water seal. So it's usually around about a 30 to 45 degree pitch roof works fairly well for shingles or any kind of tiles. Generally look better in about a 30 to 45 degree minimum. If you want to create very shallow pitched roofs like this, let's even drop this down a little bit further. Tiles start to look very, very strange, because if you imagine the rain hitting that, it actually goes in and under the tiles. So this sort of roof is never that flat. However, let's take a roof I recently created. Let's say you have a nice rusted little zinc roof like that. That can often be fairly low pitched. In fact, you often do get this sort of shantytown type look where the roof is actually very, very pitched. It can even go down a little bit lower than that. And that's probably about the minimum that you would see. Whoops, game's going a bit bonkers there. That's about this as low a roof as you would get with roof sheeting. You can try a more modern look, not quite so rusted. And there you go. So that's how you can use monopitch roofs with the right kind of materials. Here's another one that also works quite well. However, putting tiles on that just looks ridiculous. So it's important to keep in mind what sort of materials you use and what sort of pitch you've got. See, thatch on there would just look dreadful. But the roof materials make the roof, gosh, where's the game going round and round? Either make the roof or break the roof. And there's a brief tutorial on how to use materials correctly on your roofs. You can also mix and match roofing materials, but again, most houses, if you want to avoid the shantytown look, you tend to stick to very similar roof types. You never sort of have two different types of roofs, especially in one building, unless it was a very cheap alteration. If you enjoyed this tutorial, won't you give it a thumbs up? It helps me to grow the channel, but more importantly, it lets other viewers know that this is valuable material. If you haven't already subscribed, What are you waiting for? Hit that bell icon and turn on notifications. That way, when I release new material, you'll be the first one to know. Thanks so much for watching this tutorial.